We are just 1 week away from Yom Teruah. Aside from that, this week also marks the anniversary of the most important miracle Yeshua ever performed. It was during this week in history that he fed the 5,000. Hard to believe, but it's the only one of Yeshua's miracles that is recorded in all four Gospels. And because of that, this event in Yeshua's life serves as the anchor for lining up all other Gospel events into chronological order. Now, why does that matter? It matters because once we know the proper chronology of his life, we can clearly see that Yeshua did certain things on certain days on the ancient Hebrew calendar, things that no one else could have done unless they had divine timing to make these things happen. As such, it became obvious to everyone around him that Yeshua was indeed the Messiah. And we're going to get into that more in a little bit. But first, it's the end of the sixth day. The sun is set. And this is Shabbat Night Live!
It's Shabbat Night Live from Charlotte, North Carolina, with your host, Michael Rood. Join Michael and guest hosts Scott Laird and Matthew Hall as they welcome, from Wild Branch Ministries, Brad Scott. Now, here he is, the Director of the Chronological Gospels International Relations, Scott Laird.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live. We are smack dab in the middle of the Messianic miracle, also known as Charlotte, North Carolina. And next week, we will not be here. We are coming to you from Rochester, New York. Yes, we're going to be in New York State. I love New York. New York apples, all the wonderful things there in New York. We're going to be at the stage for Yom Teruah. We're going to be at the Hyatt Regency, which is the hotel right next to the conference center. We're actually going to be in the conference center. More on that in a minute. And also tonight, you are in for a treat. Michael Rood has a special message coming up later on the program. But, I don't know. It's going to be pretty tough to beat last week's finale to the Ark of the Covenant series. I love that series, but fear not, this one's going to be great too. So, don't worry if you've missed a few of the episodes of the Ark of the Covenant. All you have to do is go to aroodawakening.tv, and at the top of the page, you'll see a link there for Shabbat Night Live. Just click that, and you'll find all of the previous episodes there. And if you like what you see, you can now own the entire teaching series on DVD. Just go to our website, click on the Store tab, and you will find it there, the Ark of the Covenant. It looks just like that right there. There it is. 9 episodes, only $59. And that's 9 hours, $59. World-class teaching from the most important archaeological find of all time, the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, on the cover here, you will see that there is a rendering of the Ark of the Covenant. And that is actually a very accurate rendering from people who have actually seen the Ark. Michael actually had a clay model made of it, and this rendering was made from that model. So if you want to see the world's most accurate rendition of the Ark of the Covenant and the world's best teaching on it, there you have it. $59, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, on to Yom Teruah. We would love to see you there. It all starts next week, Friday through Sunday, September 26th to the 28th at the Rochester Riverside Convention Center. Michael Rood will be there, of course. I'll be teaching on how to reverse disease with diet. It's a lot easier than you think, by the way. And our special guest tonight, Brad Scott, he will be teaching on the miraculous mysteries of the universe. If you've never heard Michael or heard Scott teach on these, Brad Scott teach on these things, it's quite amazing. He delves into things that you probably never heard of or never thought of before. So we'll also have a whole bunch of other well-known Messianic teachers, like, let's see, Arthur Bailey's going to be there, Chris Knight from out in California, he's going to be there, many others. There's a ton of breakout sessions, including Hebraic dance, tzitzit making, plus we have a teen party with Laura and Annie. That one's going to be fun. I've heard they're going to have karaoke. Oh yes, look out, karaoke with Laura and Annie. A singles get-together we're going to have as well, plus a special kids program with Mrs. Noah. Everybody is really putting all efforts into this. It's all included with your donation of any amount. When you register online at aroodawakening.tv, you've only got a week left, so make sure you do it. And be sure you do register. Now, if you want friends to come with you and say, oh, come along with me, you can do that, but they have to register online. We have to do that because we have to know the number of people that are in certain sessions, and there's a Shabbat meal, so we need accurate numbers. So if you would, please register at aroodawakening.tv. Click on the Yom Teruah advertisement there, and you will see how to sign up. Now, as I mentioned, Brad Scott is here tonight. He was here last week as well, but we asked him to stick around for another show. So Michael and Brad will continue their conversation right here at this desk tonight. But first, I would like to introduce the guy who is going to be leading worship at the Yom Teruah event with the Aviv worship team. He is also teaching a breakout session on how to write songs, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. They're even going to do some music with the kids at Yom Teruah. So please welcome my co-host tonight, Rood Awakening's customer service coordinator, Matthew Hall. Matthew.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be
good.
here.
Good. You know, last week we talked a bit about the songs that you and your wife have written for Yom Teruah.
Right. Yep.
And this week I understand that you're going to be teaching songwriting.
Yes.
Songwriting. So tell us how we're going to be doing that. What are you going to do?
Well, actually, I think the concept of songwriting is kind of taken to a level. A lot of people think that, I can never write a song.
Right, me included.
So,
maybe I better go to your session.
Yeah, maybe you should. Everyone that I talk to says, I wish I could write songs. But really, there's specific components that go into writing a song.
Okay.
And so, once you learn those different elements of writing a song, it actually becomes real easy, kind of like learning an instrument, writing a paper. I've written academic papers for college, and the first paper you write is like, man, how am I going to figure out how to do all these formatting things? And it's the same thing with writing a song. And
okay.
So, you learn to do these different elements, and then you implement it, and the more you do it, the better you get, and it's pretty simple. So we're going to teach that, and we might, if we have time, we might actually write a worship song during the breakout session with the people that come. Yes.
Oh, great. So you'll be able to go home with a song that you wrote?
Yeah. We'll do something from scratch, so it'll be fun.
Okay, that sounds like a good time. All right, now something else that was just finalized this week. You and your wife are going to be doing something with the kids. You guys have 5 kids of your own,
Correct.
So you're very familiar with music and kids.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to be doing there?
Well, we were asked to go into the kids' session, and one thing that's real exciting for us is at home, every Shabbat I whip out the guitar and we do worship with the kids, and so they know all the mainstream worship songs and the ones that I've written, and they sing right along with us, and so we love hearing the young people and the children lift their voice in worship. So we're going to go into Mrs. Noah's class, and we're going to actually share some worship and do some more mainstream songs that the kids would know lyrically, so it's easier for them to get involved rather than us just standing up there singing at them. We want them to become engaged, which is exciting. So we're looking forward to that.
Cool. Now, you were telling me something earlier, right before we started tonight. You were telling me about how the kids all started worshiping together when you led worship at your local congregation in Charlotte.
Right. Well, Matthew Vander Els, the pastor of Founded in Truth Fellowship, that's where we attend, and I lead the worship there. And, we do our worship sessions each week, and, they're good, and everybody gets touched in one way or another, and everyone looks forward to it. But I did this one song that's really high on the, the music charts. You hear it on the radio. Yeah. It's everywhere. It's that one that goes, your love never fails, it never gives up.
I know that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it's real popular. So we started singing that song, and we have a lot of kids in our fellowship. I mean, probably, I would say, at least 25 to 30 kids.
That's pretty big for a Messianic congregation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when they go to their class, we call it the Great Exodus, because half the congregation leaves. But I started singing that song, and it was the most amazing. Every kid in that building began to just sing at the top of their lungs. And
wow.
It just mixed with the adults. The whole place was filled, and it was just the most amazing experience.
Wonderful.
So we were real blessed by that. So we're hoping we can do that again with all the kids at Yom Teruah.
Very good. Sounds good. Okay, so there you have it. There's a ton of fun things going on for kids at Yom Teruah, but it's not just for kids. We put this kind of event, we put this kind of effort into programs for everyone, the families, the married couples, the singles, the teens. We talked about the teen party, all that kind of good stuff. One guy who's going to be there, I really appreciate, is Russell Freeman.
Yes.
He is part of the, he's going to do the wilderness training.
Right.
And he owns a tent company called Freeman Tents.
By the way, Russell, I'm still waiting for my tent.
Oh, yeah.
I'm waiting patiently. Sukkot is coming up, and I need a tent.
That's right. We need some Sukkot help over here, Russell. And Russell has a real nice beard.
We were talking about that, yes.
Yeah. Russell was on the tour with us when we went with Michael all over the Northeast here.
Right.
around Great Lakes. And okay, here's a picture of Russell right now. Here's he with his grandfather. Oh yeah, check out that beard. Russell's a strapping young man. There he is. Great beard.
I actually have beard envy.
You have beard envy?
I have beard envy.
Okay, why do you have beard envy?
Because I can't grow a full. Well, my father says just let it grow. I even talked to Chef Jacob, and he says, "Well, I have bald spots. You know, I have spots where no hair
bald
grows.
Spots.
Yeah, so I can grow a patch up top, and then some down here. And so if I grow it out, I look like a hobo. I mean, there's no uniformity to it.
You got to do a comb over.
Well, yeah, there you go. I got plenty on the top.
Beard.
I got plenty on the top, so we could grow the top part and do a little comb over the bald spots.
Oh, gosh, that's funny. Okay, well, there you have it. Lots of stuff going on at Yom Teruah. How to reverse disease with diet, all that kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing and everyone else is going to be doing. Right. These are all things we can do to prepare for the end times. We have people signing up to come from all over the place, quite likely from some of the places where we're seeing Shabbat Night Live. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Get on our Michael Rood Facebook page and tell us where you're watching from, whether that's on Roku, Church Channel America, where else are we? GEB America, Hope TV in Canada, INSP out there in the UK, Omega Television, and Lasse, that is in the Spanish-speaking world. Of course, we're also on YouTube, iTunes, Messianic.tv, and Google TV. So, lots of places. Now, as we mentioned, we are 1 week away from Yom Teruah, and we know that by taking out our astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. There we are, the one with the flames on the front. You've heard us talk about a lot about this calendar. $30, you can get it online. It's $2 a month, we always say.
Yeah, I know, right?
Cheaper than a cup of Joe. So we are on the fourth Shabbat in the month of Elul. Elul is the sixth month. There you have it right there, sixth biblical month. Elul 23 is where we are, right there, September 19th. Now this calendar has 15 months. There's still 9 months in there, of course, if we're on the sixth month. And if you want to get to know the feasts of the Lord and the events that happened in Yeshua's life week by week, get the calendar.
Yes.
Like we said, it's only $30. You can get yours now at roodawakening.tv. Now, it was during this week that Yochanan, better known as John the Baptist, was killed. We talked about that last week. But in the coming days, Yeshua would feed the 5,000. And this event is the most significant for a couple of reasons. And the Chronological Gospels explains all that. Right. This is event number 102 in the Chronological Gospels Bible. And we touched on that last week, so we're not going to reread that. But I want to read to you why this event is so important, direct from the Chronological Gospels right in the beginning. And that is on pages 3 and 4, right at the beginning of the Bible. And let's hear this. Now, this is why this event is important. In all four Gospels, the feeding of the 5,000 takes place at the end of the summer, okay? End of the summer, when the 12 apostles returned from their paired assignments that Yeshua sent them on throughout the villages in the Galilee. That's recorded in all four Gospels. Now, in the 6th chapter of John, it records that the feeding of the 5,000 took place 2 days before Yeshua taught in the synagogue at Capernaum on the Sabbath day. And on the Sabbath, Yeshua's exposition was on the subject of the last day and the resurrection, the perpetual theme of Yom Teruah.
Correct.
Again, we're at the end of the summer, it's beginning of the fall feast.
Right.
So now the 7th chapter of John, the chapter right after that, opens with Yeshua making plans to go up to the Feast of Tabernacles, which begins on the 15th day of the month, exactly 2 weeks after the Day of Trumpets.
Correct.
So here we are. It's all this fall time stuff. So you can see that the translators, when they said in John 6:4 that the feast of the Passover was nigh,
right.
They were mistaken. I mean, they didn't know their Passover from their Sukkot.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Now,
So-
do you think that was on what's your opinion? Is that on purpose? Or was it just a simple mistake? They didn't quite know the seasons of the Hebrew timeline. It was just an accident.
I don't know. You know, Michael obviously has an opinion on this, and he's done a lot of research into
Right.
that. And he mentions Eusebius.
Right.
And so on the page 3, you can actually see that, a little
Right.
bit of what he says here. And he says, it was Eusebius who first proposed a 3.5-year ministry, which is where all this confusion comes
Right,
from.
right. So it started with Eusebius.
Yeah, Eusebius. It's 300 years after the resurrection of Yeshua. So for the first 300 years, I mean, it was assumed that
Right.
Yeshua's ministry was 1 year.
Right. So it was 300 years later, and he's like, oh, yeah, it must have been 3.5 years.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, and every church father and historian for the first 3 centuries, here we go, clearly stated or never contradicted
Right.
that Yeshua's ministry was about 1 year. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Now, Eusebius proposed his undocumented assertion as a fulfillment of Daniel's 70-week prophecy. And now, after 1,600 years, his eschatological, I always have a problem with that word, adherence.
Well, everybody says a problem with chronological.
Chronological,
Yeah,
yes. They continued to voice his, unprovable invention with unwavering conviction, unless you have the chronological gospel. So, sometimes we're not prepared for the fall feasts either, because we got to get ready, all that kind of good stuff.
Yep.
And you're supposed to get ready and wait for the first sliver of the moon, right? I mean, that's what we're all about. Supposed to wait for the first sliver of the moon for Yom Teruah. That's the beginning of the 7th month, and that's what Yeshua meant by "no man will know the day or the hour." Right. That's what he was referring to as Yom Teruah. And people go, I get it now. Right. It makes sense, right? It's all in context. So we're supposed to get ready and wait because no man knows the day or the hour. So we would like to help you with getting ready for the Yom Teruah tonight. And we're going to get into that in just a minute with the 7 signs. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Over the past year, A Rood Awakening International's ambassadors have been sponsoring 89 countries to take the gospel of the kingdom to the world. With these supporters' help, A Rood Awakening International has been able to broadcast on the Inspiration Channel in the UK, the Church Channel in the US, and Hope TV in Canada. But we need your help to reach the world. Now you can join the Ambassadors Club and help bring the message of Yeshua to those countries we've not yet been able to reach. There's still a great need to reach countries such as Ukraine, Syria, Malaysia, Korea, and so many more. With your gift of $100 per month or more, or your one-time gift of $1,200 or more, Michael Rood would like to bless you with this pocket watch. Call today with your monthly gift of $100 or your one-time gift of $1,200 or more and become a member of the Ambassadors Club.
And welcome back to Shabbat Night Live. We rushed through that thing about the Yom Teruah and Passover and John 6:4 and all that. So we want to get back into that just a little bit before we get into the 7 signs, because tonight is Michael's going to be teaching on the Passover. So we're gonna review that a little bit because it ties into what we're talking about here tonight. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go back to page 4 in the chronological Gospels, and we are going to find out a little bit about how this happened. This mistranslation. Mm-hmm. And you asked me before whether I thought it was a mistake or what, and Michael calls it an outright forgery.
Sure.
They put it in there to artificially lengthen the gospel story for various reasons.
Right.
But you can read that all in the chronological Gospels. And by the way, you can save $20 on the chronological Gospels if you want to get it by using the calendar that we just had here, that we just talked about.
Right. I actually talked to a guy, speaking of Eusebius in this incident, and he called the ministry, and he was talking about he's been trying to do a chronological, thing that Michael's been doing for 15 years.
Oh wow!
And he said Michael's discovery of, now there may have been other people that have known this or discovered, but Michael coming out with this discovery essentially is probably one of the biggest, most profound theological discoveries in the history.
Really?
Of our, because if you think about the deception that has taken place over all these years, over this one incident.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people have just assumed that it was 3.5 years?
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny is that people, say, well, how can you dare say that verse doesn't belong in the Bible and blah, blah, blah. Even if it does, let's say for argument's sake, say it does, it's still wrong.
Sure.
It's still talking about Passover in between John 6 and 7 when it's clearly all fall feasts from top to bottom.
Right.
Now, notice this. Passover occurs in the spring. In case you're new to all this, it occurs in the spring on the 14th day of the month of Aviv. The eating of the Passover lamb also begins on the 7th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, before which all leavened bread must be destroyed. Okay, so we're talking about that's Passover.
Right.
This is clearly not the fall feast.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, as Michael mentions here, on John 6:4, he says, "Notice that the King James translators did not deem Passover a proper noun worthy of capitalization." That's true. It's lowercase p.
Maybe they felt guilty.
Well, maybe that's what it was.
They felt bad. They're like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's at least not put a capital P on it.
Yeah, no, strange enough. Now listen to this. While the Greek version of John's Gospel refers to Passover as a feast of the Jews, so it's kind of ambiguous. So,
Right. We've talked about that. The Feast of the Jews. I mean, these feasts are not the Jews. They belong to Yehovah.
Right.
I mean, they're his appointed times, and all of Israel is called out to join him during these appointed times,
Right.
which goes beyond Judah, it goes beyond Benjamin. It extends to all of the kingdom of Israel.
And if you look at in Exodus, when everybody left Israel, there was a mixed multitude that went with them. So before they're even called the Israelites, there were people amongst them who were not of the family, so to speak. Okay, so in order to get ready for the fall feasts, because we are all family around here, let's get ready for the 7 signs. Here we go.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. These now are the 7 signs that you are not quite ready for the fall feast. Kind of like the translators in the Bible. So, 7 signs now. You haven't signed up for Yom Teruah and Rochester, New York. What's wrong with you? You know, there's a week left. You know, that's what you got to, that's the first thing you got to do.
We're really pushing this.
That's right.
You got to be there.
That's right. Okay.
All right.
Number 6.
All right. You can think of at least 5 people you are not ready to forgive.
Right. This time of year, Yom Kippur rolls around. We are to go through our mind and go, gosh, who haven't I forgiven? Who have I wronged? And just make all things right.
Exactly.
But you're not ready for the feast if you still got some grudges to bear.
Count them all on one hand.
All right. Number 5 sign, you are not ready for the fall feasts. You want to go to Yom Teruah, but you haven't signed up at aroodawakening.tv. Okay, see, this is the problem. We're trying to,
I think they're getting it.
I think we're getting this. Yeah, it's the first of the fall feasts. It starts when the new moon is sighted.
Right.
No man knows the day or the hour. When it goes, we go. Boom. You're there. You'll be in Rochester, New York. Join us. Number 4, sir.
Number 4, you still haven't started that diet you promised yourself you would start after Passover.
Guilty.
So, like, that's our New Year's resolution, Passover.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it is technically the new year.
Technically, yeah. Now, number 3, after all your friends are going to Rochester, New York, but you haven't signed up for Yom Teruah yet. Am I making myself clear? Okay, number 2, what do you have, Matthew?
All right, you still haven't dismantled your sukkah from last year.
Ah, well.
That's a problem.
That is a problem, yes. And the number 1 sign you're not ready for the fall feast, how many times do I have to say it? Go to aroodawakening.tv and sign up for Yom Teruah. Rochester, New York, be there. It's next week, people. Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back with Michael Rood and Brad Scott. Stay with us.
Prepare for the largest Yom Teruah event since the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. A Rude Awakening International presents the Yom Teruah 2014 International Messianic Convention. Join us in Rochester, New York, September 26th through the 28th for an event unlike anything we've ever had. More teachers, more information, more fun, and more entertainment than ever before. We've got 24 breakout sessions with tons of different speakers. Plus, Hebraic dance lessons, wilderness survival training, tzitzi making lessons, a kids program with Mrs. Noah, a singles get-together, even a Teruah party for teens, and much more. And the speakers are some of the most well-known Messianic leaders in America. Michael Rood, Brad Scott, Arthur Bailey, David Jesse, and more. If you want to come, you'd better hurry. Hotel rooms are filling up fast. Get all the details online at aroodawakening.tv. See you at Yom Teruah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are just 1 week to Yom Teruah, the Day of Trumpets. This is the feast all through the book of Deuteronomy that it emphasizes this, it repeats it over and over and over, the importance, the veracity of this feast, and it tells us to especially remember the Day of Trumpets. Because this is one of the feasts of the Lord, the one that occurs every year on a day and hour that no man knows. And we must be prepared ahead of time for its prophetic fulfillment if we are going to be able to fully engage in what the Almighty has for us. So each year, this is what this ministry does. From its very inception, the Day of Trumpets has been the feast that we especially remember. And to do that, we have with us a number of guests, and the guest that was with us last week, Brad Scott from Wild Branch Ministries. And yes, I will say that he is one wild branch, and he's back with us. He's going to be, this is at Yom Teruah. It's going to be Brad Scott Exposed, and we are going to be with him for his address on Basar Echad, One Flesh. and other secrets of the universe. And during the breakout sessions, he's going to be with us to share some of his insights from Shaul, or Paul, the apostle, and also have his video on his presentation that was done a number of years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, couldn't wait to have him back with us again this week. You're going to see him live next week, Yom Teruah. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Scott.
Yes, you will.
Brad.
Yes, hello, Michael, once again.
Once
Good to
again,
be with
thank
you.
you. Thank you for being
Yes.
with us for Shabbat Night
Absolutely.
Live.
Absolutely.
A lot of people very excited about what you're going to be sharing, especially this breakout session. This is something that you're going to be dealing with things that you have run into all over the globe, really. Mm-hmm. And we're going to find out that Paul's first name is not
But.
Tell us why his name is not But.
Well, obviously, that's kind of a joke, because when Paul's name comes up in a conversation with Western-thinking people, Western religious people, that's what it always precedes. It is but Paul, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the dramatic video and so forth that was done a while back is not just me standing there talking about Paul.
Right,
I'm
become him.
Yes, I'm full makeup.
Context, full makeup, full
costume,
bigotry, biblical garment, the
That's
first
right.
century.
That's right.
Love it. It was absolutely fantastic. I was there for that particular event, and you're going to have this available
at Yom Teruah.
after the Sabbath. People will be able to pick this up.
That was actually born from me trying to, in the process of the congregation I pastored, trying to get things across that Paul had done. At some point realizing that I'm a prophet in my own country here. This is Brad talking, see? And so I was sitting around one night thinking to myself, I did a lot of theater when I was in college and high school. Why don't I come up with this character named Paul who actually is doing the teaching? And so what I did at the church I pastored is that I just pretended that I was going down to New Mexico or something to teach at another place, and I wouldn't be there, and that we were going to have a special guest. So we did that for a couple of months, so forth, put out a bunch of flyers, and what I based the whole thing on was Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks' The 2,000-Year-Old Man, if you remember that. And so I used this as the backdrop. I did, the jokes were Jackie Mason kind of jokes. I made Paul very humorous, and so I combined the teaching with the humor, presenting Paul as a not with the little Greek halo kind of thing above his head and so forth, but a normal person with normal passions and so on and so forth. And then I did it, and I didn't even tell my children. And so I walked in there. I had a limo driver bring me. Okay, so Paul comes out of a limo. And I had my chauffeur walk with me, so he was my bodyguard, and bring him in there, and I did the whole thing. And my son at that time was only about 8, and I have a little birthmark on one of my arms here. See, a little birthmark right there, and nobody knew anything. And then at the end, I start to lift up my hands and pray, and my son saw this and went, "Dad!" and I love it. And people are kind of
even your children didn't know.
Even my children did not know
until that moment.
Right, that it was me, because I kind of rough up my voice a little bit, and so then I decided to do this kind of thing and blame it all on Paul, if you will. And as I said before, I did my homework on Paul. I investigated not just the things that he says, but all the extra biblical evidence we have, article volumes and all those kind of things, to investigate all the background of Paul I possibly could. And I began to fall in love with Paul, and I began to realize that here is as a matter of fact, one of the series states that I came to talk about a few things that everybody says I said that I didn't say. And so forth. And so I began to realize that Paul is a most misunderstood man. And so therefore, I developed another series called Paul, False Apostle, or Falsely Accused. And so that deals with just straight teaching, and it's based upon a recent book that was out a few years ago, basically stating, and this guy's, if you will, not Christian. Because most Christians, like Paul, like the idea that Paul taught against the Torah and got rid of all those things, so they're not going to say anything bad about Paul. And so it's people who don't have the wherewithal to explain Paul to people is the problem. So he solves the explanation by saying that Paul was a false apostle. He was the Benjaminite wolf and so forth. He was the wolf in sheep's clothing. And he was the one that Yeshua warned us about in Revelation chapter 2, because Paul's the only one that wrote an epistle to the Ephesians. So therefore, when the Ephesians says, when he thanks them for exposing false apostles, that had to be Paul. And it just goes on and on and on. So I decided to...
I read the book too, and I thought, this person was, not only deceptive, but he was a fool. Just not understand the scriptures at all. And I go back to the very first thing that I actually filmed at Lester Sumrall Studios on the Great Secret of Solomon's Temple, and the statement that I made in there is that unless we can find exactly where Paul is quoting from the Torah and the prophets that he's constantly doing, until you find and can identify that, then you don't even have him in context. You have no idea what he's talking about because you don't know the Torah and the prophets. We have grown up unlearned and unstable in the very scriptures that were available at that time.
That's right.
And so now, this person has taken off and he's got quite a following going on out there of other people that they have no idea what Paul is really saying. And so you're correcting this out there, the misunderstood words of Paul.
Yeah, so they can be duped into to any kind of arrangement. What a lot of people do is, because what he does in his book is he shows that this epistle shouldn't be there, and none of Paul's epistles should be in the canon. And so he goes through this, weaving these things back and forth to show why it should be removed from the canon, which reminds me of something I call American Medical Association theology. Just a little term that I have because most doctors, not all of them, but most doctors in America, when there's something wrong with you, when there's a contradiction in your body, something's going wrong in your body, we're basically trained to do two things. Either give you some pills, here, take this.
Take some drugs.
Numb yourself up so you won't think about it, so I can get the next one in here at $45 an hour. Or let's open you up and just take that thing right out of you. And so the answer is to remove it from you, and then we don't have to mess with it, even though we don't realize
I like that.
years
AMA
later.
theology.
It's AMA theology is what it is. And so we do that theologically. We say, well, it's really convenient for me to deal with this, instead of people getting together and hashing it out. Because we're trained from the Western way. We don't get together and hash things out. We all run to our corners and write blogs and tweeters or whatever those things are called, and we write terrible things about each other. Where in a Hebrew culture, they get together and hash the thing out. But we're not trained to do that. And so it's easy just to remove it from the text rather than getting together with other brothers and solving this problem, because the things that Paul says in their context, obviously, are easy to be understood.
They are. And as Yeshua said, that he would send the Spirit, the gift of the Holy Spirit, to lead us into all truth.
Yeah.
And I found that this particular book that we're referring to is really the epitome of someone who does not have the Holy Spirit, who's not been led into any truth. And so you get rid of Shaul, and you get rid of one of the greatest examples of all time of someone who is led by the Spirit. The book of Acts, takes us on that journey where, they're trying to go into Bithynia. They're trying to go into trust these different places, and the Spirit is not allowing them. And then he has this dream. He sees this vision, and immediately gets up, packs his bag, and then we see what happens, because they get, the next place they go, he gets beaten with Silas, they get put in prison, and there it is. The Philippian jailer, he is the man with that opens the entire door to Philippi.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't look good. I mean, he got beaten, he got thrashed severely
absolutely.
in the course of this, but yet it's Shaul, it's Paul who lays down the manifestation of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, interpretation of tongues, prophecy, word of knowledge, word of wisdom, discerning of spirits, faith, miracles, and healing. And you see that he articulates things that we see that Elijah and Elisha walking in. These are the manifestations of the Holy Spirit, but you get rid of him and you've got nothing left except the letter of instead of the Spirit of.
That's
and
exactly
you can't see and you can't live and walk in your fullness without the Spirit.
That's right. And what I'm going to do, and I'm glad you brought that up, what I'm going to be teaching about is the difference between Paul presenting Yeshua from a halakhic point of view as opposed to an agadic point of view. Because Paul was focusing
now explain
on...
that to our viewers out there. That sounds like some pretty big Hebrew words there.
Yes, well, halakhic, from the word halach, means how you walk, how you live your life. Here's the instructions on how to walk. And agadic is something that comes forth from inwardly. From the heart. Avraham Heschel and some very well-known rabbinic sages had taught these precepts for a long time. And so Paul doesn't present Yeshua as from a halakhic point of view, but from the heart, saying if you don't have him in the heart, then your halakha is just going to curse you. And that's the reason why when Peter writes about Paul, we all know this famous verse, Michael. Paul says some things that are hard to be understood, which those who are unlearned and unstable wrest as they do the other scriptures, and the key word is the last one, unto their own destruction. So Peter is letting us know that Paul does say some things that are hard to be understood, but the reason why they're hard to be understood is people don't put them in context, they're unlearned, they're unstable, they don't know anything, but the focus is that the result is it leads to their own destruction. Now all you got to do is go back to the talk, read the prophets, read the writings, and you'll see over and over and over again. Just take the area of the judges and the kings. Every time God's people turn away from his commandments, they self-destruct. They corrupt themselves, they defile themselves because they turn away from his commandments. So whoever these people are that Peter's talking about in his epistle, the conclusion that they're coming to leads to their own destruction. Well, what always leads to people's destruction? They turn away from the commandments of God. And so what Paul's simply saying is something Yeshua said. You honor me with your lips, halakha, but your heart, agadah, is far from me. So the whole idea isn't heart or commandments, which is what traditionally is revealed in Orthodox Judaism and traditional Christianity. It's either the commandments, you either got to choose the Torah or this Jesus character. You got to make a choice. You can't have both. Well, that's wrong. In Hebrew thinking, it's not one or the other, it's one before the other. Once you have him in their heart, now you have the power through the Holy Spirit to be able to keep those commandments. But we're like children. If you have rules in your home with no relationship, you got rebellion. And what does rebellion do? It leads to destruction. So put first the relationship, then give him the rules, and then you have a son that's willing to follow his father and his mother to the ends of the world, and follow him to the ends of the earth.
So, we see this, in the broad net of all the denominations, like 30,000 different denominations now. And a lot of what is going on, we could say, is that, being inside the church, and that's where we came from. That's where hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, they sat in the same pew for all these years, and then all of a sudden, they realize that, they have destroyed themselves because they have twisted, they've wrestled Paul's writings as they have done the other scriptures to their own destruction. This other is related scriptures. And not realizing that you've got to really relate what he's saying back to the Torah and the prophets. You can't be ignorant. You cannot be unstable in these things. These scriptures, of course, are not Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. It's the Torah. It's the prophets.
That's right. When pew-sitting believers, unbelievers, whatever, come to the realization that the New Testament's not new, it's just true. As soon as they realize that Paul didn't say anything that was new, it's always been Jew or Gentile in the body of Messiah that have been one. Gentiles were always invited to come in by grace through faith. So it's not, but if you don't know your Tanakh, if you don't know the writings of the prophets, if you've been trained, that was all done away with, and so you don't, it's just Sunday school stories to you, pictures of, giraffe heads sticking out of arks and so forth, and that's all the Old Testament is to you. Well, then you don't know these things were taught from the very beginning, so the logical conclusion is they're new rather than they're true. But as you well know, when you read anybody, any writer in the New Testament, not just Paul, Paul never stops and explains anything. When he says, for by grace are you saved through faith, he doesn't stop and give a 3-hour PowerPoint presentation on grace and faith. He assumes you already know what grace and faith is, so he didn't bother to stop. Oh, okay, by the way, yes, right, you're new baby Gentiles. Okay, here's what these terms mean. He assumes that you already know Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and no writers bother to explain themselves because it's already explained, as you well know, from the beginning.
Right. It's been explained thousands of years ago, and the definition doesn't change. I just say, just because the word for grace appears 4 times as often in the Torah and the prophets as it does in the writings of Paul, it doesn't mean that grace ended on the day of Pentecost.
That's right. That's right. And when church, ecclesia, shows up as many times in the Old Testament as it does in the New Testament, when apostles show up more in the Old Testament than they do, apostles show up more in the Old Testament, apostolos, just translated as send rather than apostles, then you realize nothing's new, things are just true.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because, one of the great keys, and this is where you started, we talked about it a little bit last week, is that you really started your serious study into the Scripture in the Greek language. And we have a translation by Hebrew scholars of the Torah and the prophets into Greek, and this is before Yeshua was on the scene, and it's called the Septuagint.
Right.
And so in words in culture don't change that much until technology really advances.
Right.
And so even though we have the words from Matthew all the way through Revelation, we have them in Greek, it's still describing a Hebrew culture. Sure. And those words in Greek, we can take those words and find them right back in the Torah and the prophets by way of the Septuagint.
Yes, exactly right. There's, as a matter of fact, I have a series called Learning Research Tools, in which I show people through PowerPoint presentations how to do these things, because it's put it in their hands. And so what I do is I simulate what the Septuagint looks like and so forth, because I was dumb then and didn't know how to take a picture of it and put it on the side. So I just typed it out one letter at a time, simulated a Strong's Concordance, a Brown Driver Briggs, Gesenius, all those things, and showed people you can do this yourself. You don't have to rely upon the system, which I call pinheaded theologians, because my premise is that the biggest problem in the body of Messiah in the last 2,000 years has been pinheaded theologians and pointy-headed intellectuals. And I don't say that to get a laugh or a snicker. I say that very seriously, because first of all, let me define what that is. A pinheaded theologian is not someone who has a degree in theology and teaches the Scriptures. Otherwise, I'd be a pinhead, okay? It's someone who was taught that unless you have a degree in theology, you have no business teaching the Scriptures. And so I ask people the rhetorical question, and I'll ask the same to you. Of all the things that divide us, you said 30,000, I've heard figures up to 41. I heard a Roman Catholic priest in front of a Protestant audience the other day say 61,000 different denominations. So there's a whole lot. Of all the things that we debate, argue, split in the last 2,000 years, how many of these debates have these theologians solved in the last 2,000 years? I'll give you 5 minutes.
Well, since that's a rhetorical question, if I were to answer it, then I would have defeated the entire
That's
purpose
right. That's right.
of the rhetorical
It's zero.
question. So,
we all know what it is. They haven't solved any problems. We still argue in 2014 the same things we did in 14. Nothing's changed in 2,000 years.
Are we doing what Yeshua said to do? Take the gospel of the kingdom that he taught to the entire world, and that doesn't mean that, necessarily we're even going to make a living doing this thing.
Right.
It's just that unless heaven backs us up, you pointed this out last week, it's like, you go out there, you go to the Far East, they can't even afford to pay your ticket to get there, but because other people have stood with you, that allows you to take that message that changed their life to these people, which now you are doing the Great Commission.
Yeah.
And
that
I
is what it is.
applaud you for that, because there are a lot of people that want to make their living. Hebrew roots is a new big sales thing.
Yeah.
In the churches, they'll televangelists will sell you a tallit. They'll put a keep on your head because that's the monthly love gift or whatever. But I mean, is where is it really going? They'll talk about the feast, but will they actually do it? Will they actually engage in it? No, it's Jewish things sell.
Yeah, that's right. It's the latest fad, and it's been going on for, I would say, about 10 or 15 years now. It's been the latest thing to march out on the stage with a tallit and do a whole big teaching holding the tallit and so forth. And God forbid that we ever actually don one or whatever, but or on seat or whatever the case may be. And that's the latest fad, and that's what a lot of people are into. is the latest fad, and it's a shame, but it's being hoping to get zapped out on this one. But they're bastardizing, bastardizing the Word of God, and they're mocking Judah, if you will.
Yeah, I'm going to tread on some thin ice here for
Go ahead.
perhaps a little bit here, but the Messianic Judaism cult, which is a two-house us and them.
Yeah.
You know, Jews and then them.
Yep.
Okay, you know, associate members of the body of Messiah, but can't really be full members of the body of Messiah.
Right.
And you know, this to Messianic true Messianic Jews, a lot of times it's an embarrassment that Gentiles whose heart is changed by the Holy Spirit just by nature want to keep the Torah, want to keep the commandments, when, you know, they will do it sometimes for show.
Yeah.
But we see a real problem going on out there with the Messianic Judaism, which of course Judaism is ancient Phariseeism. And so attaching the name Messianic to something Yeshua said don't do,
creates a problem, and that's part of the subject of the Basar Akkad book, and that is that I show that at least two people in the last 2,000 years understood what you just talked about. One was Yeshua in the parable of the laborers in the field, when everybody got the same thing, and the ones that were there the whole time said, "You made them equal unto us? God forbid, we can't have that." Yeshua understood it, and more importantly, Dr. Seuss clearly understood these
Dr.
things.
Seuss.
Yes, because
Theodore Geis understood this principle.
He understood the whole principle.
Please share it with us.
Well, I can't do it as wonderful as he did, but basically there's the star-bellied sneetches and the plain-bellied sneetches. And the plain-bellied star-bellied sneetches, because they had stars on their belly and so forth, wandering around with snooting and they're sniffing in the air and snorting and so forth, and they were proud and so forth. We were not like you plain-bellied sneetches over here and so forth. So they would make them second-class citizens. And then when a Messianic a salesman came into town and realized, oh, there's money to be made here, then they sets up a machine in which he put stars on the plain belly sneetches, and they charged them $10 each to put stars on their bellies. So out the other end comes plain bellies with stars. Now everybody's got stars on their belly. So here come the star belly sneetches go, we're all equal. We can't have that. So the salesman charged them $10 each to take their stars off the bellies. And so day in and day out, they're putting the stars on, they're taking the stars off, until at the end of the book, the sneetches finally realize we're all just children of Israel. I mean, we're all just sneetches.
Were these stars of David?
You can imagine that if you want. It's just, I think it's very interesting that they're stars.
Okay. Right.
And that makes them more special or better than someone else.
Yeah.
When Yeshua uses that word isos, equal, which is where we get isotopes from. You know, you got the fundamental element, and then you have isotopes. He makes them equal. And of course, what do? They complain. And what does Yeshua say? What's interesting about that whole thing that Yeshua says is that he tells those who have worked and suffered and persecuted in the heat all day and were there from the very beginning, he tells them what their inheritance is. They're going to get a denarii or a penny or whatever the King James has in a day.
Day's wage.
But all the rest of them, he doesn't tell them that's their inheritance. He says, I will do what is right with you. And at the end of the day, he doesn't do what you'd normally do, bring the ones in heat all day and give them their penny and send them off, because they wouldn't have known. So it says, I will start with the last, then go back to the first. So they could see,
rubbing it in.
That's right, so they could see, hey, they're getting the same, or else they'd have taken off and gone and bought a bagel or whatever, and that'd have been the end of it. And so they saw them go, and because Yeshua is trying to teach that the first shall be last and last shall be first, means they're both the same. They're both the same. And of course, people are going to complain. And this is what we have, is really have identity theft. That these kind of organizations, not the people, but the organizations, think that we have stolen their wallets and we're running around the world charging things on their credit cards or something. And because it's an identity thing. Keeping the commandments identifies us as Jews. And so therefore, when you are non-Jews doing it, you've stolen our identity. And so I go through this book showing in the physics of the universe how God never designed it that way in the first place.
And I see that, they encourage Gentiles to keep doing what the Bible calls abominations. Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. They encourage them to do what the Almighty calls abominations because that keeps them without the scar.
That's right.
You know,
we want to keep you a plain-bellied sneetch.
That's right. We want to keep them off to the side. And so, you know, only real Jews get to keep the commandments.
That's true.
Everybody else can live like a bunch of pagans out there. And see, at Mount Sinai, this is where we received the Great Commission. If you will keep my commandments, I will make you a nation of priests. You'll be my prophets. You'll be my representatives to the entire world. That's why he divided the nations according to the number of the yet unborn sons of Israel. You know, the Tower of Babel, he disrupted the one world government, the Novus Ordo Seclorum of its day, and said, you know, I'm going to select a people. I'm going to choose them. They are going to represent me, and we are going to, you know, we have our job to change the world. It's not to be special and above everybody else, but it's to get that gospel of the kingdom that Yeshua taught out to the entire world.
And to be fair to them,
Okay,
they do let us come on the plantation. It's just that we can't use the bathroom. We got to go out in the woods. So you can come here and you can work in the fields in our plantation, but you got to use the bathroom outside. You can't come inside and use our bathroom. So God forbid that we would mix these things. And people might think you're part of the household, and God forbid we can't have that. They got to make sure that everyone understand you're the servants, you know, out in the working the fields. And so it's it's sometimes the only way to really get a point across, because trying to deal with it academically has just never worked. Sometimes you have to use a little, God forbid, sarcasm. You have to.
Well, that's the 10th fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. You have to do that. And keeping in mind, of course, as you said a couple of times already, the Great Commission is not to go win souls for Jesus. The Great Commission is go ye therefore and teach all nations. And the Holy Spirit was given to bring back all of his words to remembrance and to guide us into all truth. And once you see those things, then you can see the oneness of our Creator. You can see his unity. You can see that he is truly the same yesterday, today, and forever. We're all taught that Yeshua is the same yesterday, today, and forever, but we somehow don't apply that to the work of the Holy Spirit and the Father's commandments. You know, it's only him.
Well, Brad, we are very excited to have you part of our Yom Teruah experience again this year. We are going to gather together and do exactly what Yeshua said, go out and make disciples. The disciples are coming together. We're going to feed you. We are going to saturate you with the word and then send you out on the rest of the world. Brad, thanks for being with us. And next week,
you're welcome.
I will see you.
That's right. I'll see you next week, Michael.
I'll see you next week. And,
be blessed in Israel.
And so thanks for being with us. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update from Annie and Laura. Or is it Lori and Anna? Take it away, ladies, with the Rood Review.
Hi, I'm Annie.
And I'm Laura.
And you're here in time for Rood Review.
You're also in time to reserve your space to come see us in Rochester, New York at Yom Teruah.
That's right. You're not too late. We're only a week away, but you still have plenty of time to register.
Oh, goodness, Annie, we're a week away.
I know.
Oh, my goodness, it's like time is flying.
It flew by.
Okay, so my favorite thing in the world is to do Rood Review live at the events. It is just so much fun to have that studio audience there, and it's like, yay! And they're like, yay! I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So join us in Rochester, New York. You go to roodawakening.tv/Yom Teruah, and we want to tell you a little bit more about why you want to join us. What are some things happening? What's different about Yom Teruah than our other feast events?
Well, for one thing, we do have a mixer. Once you arrive and register on Friday afternoon, we have a mixer for everybody to get involved. Now, we're actually doing something a little different, and it's kind of a surprise, so I'm only going to spoil a little bit of it, but we're actually going to allow people to meet from different states. So you actually get to interact with people that live close by, so you can form a fellowship or keep in contact.
That is awesome. We always have people coming up to us wanting to meet other people from their area. We've put it on the name tags, we've given them little notepads, but this is a way you're going to be able to connect with somebody from your state, and that is just very valuable.
Now, I heard that there's an update about shirts.
Yes, we are sold out of mediums. They are finito. They're gone. So you can now still get the large, the extra large varieties. If you go to aroodawakening.tv/Yom Teruah, you'll see the t-shirt placed there that you can look at the t-shirts. You can go to our ticket site and order your t-shirt there. Again, we're only asking if you attend the event, then order the t-shirt, because we're not going to be shipping those out.
Now, my favorite part of every event is the mikvah. And we are definitely going to have a mikvah at Yom Teruah. So we encourage you, if you have not participated in a mikvah before with the Rood Awakening, it is unlike any other.
Just go ahead and plan to be there. Pack something to wear to the mikvah. You know, some jeans, a colored t-shirt. You're not going to want to do a white t-shirt. You're not going to want to wear a swimsuit. Wear clothes. Pack something, because when you get there, you'll be surprised how many people change their mind. They weren't going to do it, and then they got there, and they really want to do it.
That's right. So, I mean, it's really a life-changing experience. The mikvah's always after the last teaching on Sunday, so just anticipate it, prepare for it, make travel arrangements, and for us, it's our most touching moment.
So prepare for the mikvah, prepare to be in New York and see us live, or if you're at home, prepare to catch us next week for the Rood Review. Shabbat Shalom to our fans.
The last night that Yeshua was with his disciples, the Last Supper before the Passover was sacrificed, he took bread and he took wine. He said before that Abraham saw his day and rejoiced. But what does that mean? He saw his day and rejoiced. Well, it was the Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, that brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. He blessed the Most High with the blessing that Abraham taught Yitzhak, Yitzhak taught Yaakov, and is still spoken today. Whenever bread and wine is served at a Jewish table, whenever it is Sabbath, especially around the world, the bread and the wine are brought forth with this blessing. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, the creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua then said, Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. This represents my shed blood that pays the sin penalty because of the broken covenant. As often as we do this, we do this in remembrance of him. So break the bread, share the wine, and we do this in remembrance of him until he comes.
The signs in the heavens and the revelation from heaven. It is now, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that we had the first of 4 lunar eclipses that is going to be occurring this year, of course, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread and during the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Sukkot in the fall. And then again next Passover, and then again at the next feast in the fall, which again is Sukkot. It was just a little over a week ago that Mars was in closest proximity to Earth in conjunction with the Earth and Sun. And it tells us in Genesis in 1:14, God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. The Creator put the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets in their courses, and they were put there for signs in the heavens. And it is only if heaven lets us know what these signs are that we know what these signs are in advance. And we also see that historically that there have been signs in the heavens that have heralded different significant events in the course of the human race. Now, these lunar eclipses that are taking place have been often misnamed blood moons. They are not blood moons. The terminology blood moon is used in the scripture. It's used in reference in the book of Revelation. It's also found in the Gospels in which Yeshua uses it. It's also in the book of Acts, and every time it refers back to a very specific verse, a very specific prophecy in the book of Joel. And in the book of Joel, we see that this, when the moon is turned to blood, it is an atmospheric event. It is not an eclipse that transpires. And so to equate these as blood moons is misleading people, is taking them off the track of what these things are actually here to tell us about. And it is only that I really have an issue with. People want to call them blood moons. You know, it sounds clever, but it's not what these are. Because when you have the sky darkened, when the stars are darkened, when the sun does not give its light and the moon is turned into blood, that is not an astronomical event. That is an atmospheric event. That is something that's transpiring upon the planet. But yet, the Creator says that He is putting the sun, the moon, the planets in their courses, and they are for signs in the heavens and for seasons. The word seasons in Hebrew is moedim, which is the feast of the Lord. These are His kadosh mikra. His kadosh are holy rehearsals. That's what His feasts are. They are rehearsals of good things that have happened in the past, such as Passover. When we celebrate Passover, we remember a good thing that happened in the past. We came out of Egypt. But we were not allowed to know, nor could it be uttered until the spring feasts were fulfilled, that each one of the feasts of the Lord were prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come. Because if Satan would have known that his execution of the Messiah would result in our redemption, Shaul tells us, Paul tells us, that Satan never would have crucified the Lord of glory. If he would have known that act was what was going to purchase our redemption, that the death of the innocent would pay the death penalty for the guilty party, and that's what we are. We are the guilty party. All of Israel, the guilty party who broke the blood covenant at Mount Sinai, and the only remedy for breaking the blood covenant is the death of the offending party. Unless someone who never breaks the covenant dies in the place of the guilty party, and then that one who dies in the place as an innocent one, when his innocent blood is shed, he then can renew the covenant with the once guilty party because they have been given his innocence. The death penalty has been paid. That is what the blood is all about. This is what the picture of Passover is all about. The substitution of the lamb for the guilty party. That's why John the Baptist, Yohanan ben Zechariah, even though he heard from heaven the voice that said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased," he did not proclaim Yeshua as the Son of God when he came out of the wilderness 41 days later. He said, "Behold the Lamb," because Yeshua is taking the place of the Lamb, which was a symbol of taking the place, the substitute for the guilty party. Each one of these feasts of the Lord are prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come, and He put these signs in the heavens, and to have the signs in the heavens at the same time of His Kadosh Mikra, His holy rehearsals, these shadow pictures of good things to come, good things that have happened in the past, this is indeed significant. And so we have to ask, and this is what I've been praying for months now, is what is heaven saying? And then I heard, what has heaven said? What has heaven already said? It was in 1999 in which I began declaring the signs in the heavens and what was going on with, first of all, with Hale-Bopp, which is the most viewed comet that has ever been in the history of the human race. More people saw Hale-Bopp, this magnificent comet, and I detailed it in The Great Secret of Solomon's Temple, and exactly what tale this comet's tail was telling as it went through the heavens, and exactly what constellations, as this was a prophetic shadow picture. And it was at that time, that was the very year, that the detail concerning the Ark of the Covenant was revealed. And the Almighty sent me on that. But I'm going to take you back a little bit further, ladies and gentlemen, because the reason why I do what I do is because I was called by heaven at a particular moment in time, and I know exactly where it happened. I know when it happened. I know every detail. I still live it and breathe it to this very day. And to give you the short version of it, I was down in Texas, just picking up a load to take to I didn't know where, turned out to be Houston. And a truck driver pulled in. He got out of the truck, he saw me, and he said, "You have changed my life." And it turned what the message that I had for him turned his life completely around. And then he said, "I've been praying for you, and the Lord told me that you are not going to be with us very long." And when I said that, it's like, what? You know, I thought I would always drive a truck. You know, I'd been doing it for a year. I thought I'd do it the rest of my life because I loved it, because of the divine appointments that happened. When he told me that, I then got to Houston, a short run. I got there, picked up a load to go to Canada. And going down the road, many of you have heard me tell this story before. I'm going down the road. The sun is setting. It's just about the Sabbath day. And I know that I can shut the truck down and I may be able to make it on time. And I'm praying for a sign from heaven. I said, show me if I'm to shut the truck down on the Sabbath. And if so, you have to tell me. You have to tell me right now. Right then, up on my screen, the computer screen on the dash said, Monday, Victoria Day in Canada. You can't deliver the load till Tuesday. Right there is an exit for a rest area. I hit the brakes, pull over, and I know that this moment is a divine appointment for me. The next morning I get out and I open up my Bible. I put it on a concrete picnic table there, and it just flops open to 2 Thessalonians. And as soon as it opens up to 2 Thessalonians, I've got more notes in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 than any other book. I mean, it's just completely covered, the whole thing. And I sit down there and I say, Lord, I know how I've been handling this, but I don't feel comfortable with it. I know that you know what you told Paul to write. And if you will, you can show it to me. Ladies and gentlemen, 20 years as a paid professional false prophet, an ultra-dispensational, pre-tribulation secret rapturist, replacement theologian extraordinaire, it fell apart right there. I have been preaching the pre-tribulation rapture and believing it my whole life, and right there I was shown right from heaven that day, and I knew there was no pre-tribulation rapture. And the scriptures that I was using and twisting in order to try to produce a pre-tribulation rapture, because that was what was ordained by my denomination, fell apart right there. And I knew that if I opened my mouth, I would lose all of my friends. I knew it would be over. But I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, thus saith Yahovah, there is no pre-tribulation rapture. And when that came to me, and then it was confirmed by a prophet that I traveled 1,000 miles in one night to get to him, and he said, the Lord wants me to pray for you. And he did, and he prophesied the very words I heard from heaven, and I knew that this 2 weeks of weeping that I had to open my mouth. And when I did, guess what? I lost every friend that I had. But that is when it all began, ladies and gentlemen. In Matthew 24, Yeshua said to 3 of his disciples. When you read the chronological Gospels, you find out exactly what 3 disciples they were, what their names were, that he took up on the side of the Mount of Olives after storming off the Temple Mount, the 23rd chapter of Matthew, with tens of thousands of people. When he stormed off the Temple Mount and said, "You're not going to see me again until you say Baruch haba b'shem Yahweh." He stormed off the temple and he told his disciples, "Take a look at these buildings. You think they're great? There's not going to be one stone left on top of another. They're all coming down." They went all the way to the Mount of Olives, and then they sat down. They said, "Master, when is this going to happen? What is the sign of your coming in the end of the age?" And he said, "Take heed that no man deceive you. For many are going to come in my name, saying, 'I'm Messiah,' yet they will deceive many. You're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. All these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation is going to rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There is going to be famine, pestilence, earthquakes in many places. All of these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they are going to deliver you up to be afflicted. They're going to kill you. You're going to be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then many are going to be offended, scandalizo, caught in a snare." He's talking about believers who are going to be scandalizo, or caught in a snare that they are going to be completely unaware of. "And they shall betray each other and shall hate one another." This is talking about believers, ladies and gentlemen. That's who Yeshua is talking to, his disciples. He's talking about their progeny, what's going to be happening when the earth and when it begins to shake and all these things start to come down. They're going to hate and betray each other to death. Take a look to your left, take a look to your right. These are the people that are going to hate and betray you to death. So give them a hug. Say, "I'm not going to take it personally, but I wish you wouldn't be so weak." "Many false prophets shall arise, pseudo-propheticos, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end shall be sozo," rescued, saved. "And this gospel of the kingdom," this gospel, the one he was preaching, not the sloppy agape, greasy grace, but this gospel of the kingdom must be preached all the world for a witness in all the nations, and then shall the end come. Then, excuse me, I mispunctuated it because I was thinking King James. "This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all nations," period. "Then the end shall come when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel. He whoso reads, let him understand. Then those who are in Jerusalem, get out of Dodge immediately. If you're on top of the house, don't drop down and get a sleeping bag. If you're out in the field, don't come back and get a jacket. Because then is going to come the time of tribulation such as the world has never seen. And except those days will be shortened, no flesh will be saved." Are you looking at me, or are you looking at something else out there, people? "Except those days be shortened, there would no flesh be saved. Woe to those that are with child, to those that give suck in those days. Pray that your flights not on the winter, not on the Sabbath day, because that is when the great tribulation starts, when the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, when that transpires. Then, if any man says, 'Look, there's a Messiah. He's in England. It's Lord Maitreya,' don't go. It's not him. Look, he is in," what was it say? "In secret chambers." What does it say? In Greek, it's tamion. That he's coming in secret. Tamion, unseen, unnoticed. Nobody's going to see. Nobody's going to know he's come and gone. He says, anyone tells you that, don't believe them. For as the lightning shines from the east unto the west and splits the sky open, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And after the tribulation of those days. When does the tribulation start? When you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel. Then after the tribulation of those days, the sun is going to be darkened. The stars will be darkened. The moon will not give its light. And then he will send forth his angels with a shout, with the voice of the trumpet, and he shall gather his elect from the four winds of heaven. It's exactly what it says in the book of Revelation at the seventh trumpet. When the dead are raised, the righteous are raised and rewarded. And he will now destroy those destroyers of the earth. And then what ensues are the bowls, or the chapak, the bowls of God's wrath. We are saved from the wrath to come. We will not endure the wrath of the Almighty, but it doesn't say that we won't endure the wrath of Satan. Nearly 500,000 Christians will be executed this year, but just not hopefully not in America. But I mean, it happens every year, ladies and gentlemen. It just isn't happening here. We are not getting out of here in the middle of a 5-course Sunday brunch after church. We are going to be here. And this is the message from heaven. You want to know what these signs in heaven mean? Number one, hear me. Nobody is getting out of here. There is no pre-tribulation rapture. Thus saith Yahovah. And I would not say that unless I knew that that word comes directly from heaven and is my commission, and I must say it. And that's why they wouldn't let me on the Prophecy Club for 4 years, because they were still swallowing the pre-tribulation rapture until finally they woke up. And then they let me go on and teach the prophetic fulfillment of the Feast of the Lord, the great secret of Solomon's temple, and what Ron Wyatt started to lay out with the finding of the Ark of the Covenant is that the confirmation of the covenant spoken by the prophet Daniel is the revealing of the Ark of the Covenant and what happened at the crucifixion. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 7 through 10. You who are now troubled will rest. Anison. The pain and strain of tribulation will be relieved. You will rest with us when the Lord Yeshua was revealed from heaven with his mighty angels in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Yeshua Messiah. Now we beseech you, brethren, concerning the coming of the Lord and our gathering together unto him, that you are not soon shaken in mind or troubled, neither by spirit nor by a word or a letter from us, is that the day of Messiah is at hand. What is this day of Messiah? When he comes and relieves the pain and strain and tribulation that those believers at that time were enduring. Don't let anyone deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except first there come, apostasia, the rebellious stand. Apostasia is not apostasy. That's a transliteration. Apo, away from stasia, which is a stand in rebellion. Listen to me. That day of our gathering together is not going to transpire. Don't let anyone deceive you. Don't let, an angel came and told me. Hockey foddy. Nonsense. That day will not come except first there come the rebellious stand, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, proclaiming that he is God. That must go down first. There is no getting out of here before that. Don't let any demon tell you otherwise. And I don't care what pulpit he stands in. Because I was a deceiver. I was a liar. I spoke presumptuously. I presumed that my denomination knew what was right, and I followed their party line, and I led people right straight to hell. I don't care if they're called the walking, talking Bible. I don't care what their credentials are. If they're preaching a pre-tribulation rapture, they are preaching a lie that was hatched in hell. Yeshua said, don't listen to those who say I'm coming back in secret. Don't listen to those who say I've already coming back. That's not what it's going to look like. I'll tell you what it's going to look like. It's like lightning ripping the sky open from the east to the west. And when I send my angels, nobody's going to miss it. You'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind, and you're still not going to miss it. See, this is all detailed in the mystery of iniquity. The legal prerequisites to the return of the Messiah. And I have spoken some things in the past concerning the annulment with the covenant with death, that people, all they can think, the next thing that's going to happen is Jesus is coming back. So when I talk about the annulment with the covenant with death in the spring of 2000, instead, on radio, on television for 6 months, if we have accurately discerned the Aviv for this year, we will see violence erupt in Jerusalem, annulling the covenant with death, the agreement with hell before sundown, September 28th, and there will be bloodshed in Jerusalem. What happened on that day? Aaron Sharon went up on the Temple Mount, opened his wife's Bible, opened up his deceased wife's Bible, read the prophecy of Ezekiel, the last day prophecy, the violence erupted. And that was when the Oslo Peace Accord was flushed down the toilet. And Oslo in Hebrew actually means toilet seat. Is not the Almighty clever? 1993, they entered into the toilet seat accord, and the toilet was flushed September 28th. But you know what people said? Oh, Rood said that Jesus is coming back September 28th. No, you're idiots. Oh, I said I'm not supposed to call people idiots anymore, but sorry. All right, you're morons. All right, thank you very much. So, by revelation, a man came up to speak to me and said, you need to go see Henry Gruver. I went down, it went a 10-hour journey. There was one seat left in the building right in front of Henry Gruver when he told the detail about him being in Jerusalem when he met Ron Wyatt, and Ron was right there by that hotel and took him over to where the Ark of the Covenant dig had taken place. After that weekend, I spent a couple more days with Henry and Judith in traveling, and then I called Ron Wyatt up and I said, I need to come see you. And I could hear the voice on the other end, yeah, right. He didn't say it that way, but it was like, you know, well, do you have some specific question? I said, and I heard it. I said, Ron, I believe if you'll pray, the Lord will tell you whether I'm supposed to come down and see you or not. He said, call me back in 2 days. I called him back, and he said, when you can be here. And I got down there, and that is when the rest of the pieces of the puzzle came together. Ladies and gentlemen, I would highly recommend, I would encourage you to watch the video. It's available on the internet. It's out there. You know, if you can't afford it, it's out there. It's on the internet or out there on the table. Michael Rood Exposed, The Confessions of a Cult Leader. You need to hear the real testimony of how the Almighty plugged all this together. See, when someone walks up to me and said, I've got a message from the Lord to you, I immediately think this person is nuts. Because I know how he deals with me, and I know the people that he's confirmed to be able to speak in my life. And I have nutcases all the time come up to me with a word from the Lord, and it's nothing but what they presumed in their mind. But when I see the hand of the Almighty lead in a very specific way, I know when he's speaking to me. And yes, heaven does speak. The Heavenly Father speaks, Yeshua speaks, by way of the Holy Spirit gives instructions to his people. And so what I'm telling you, you may think I sound arrogant or obnoxious or whatever. No, I am telling you the truth. What drives me is a revelation that I've been given at certain points in time that I can't back up on. I can't do anything else. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how many people attack me or try to steal the ministry and take everything I got. I can't stop. And look what happens. Every time something great happens out of every attempted takeover. Unbelievable. 70 weeks, Daniel 9, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, authenticate the prophet, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. The wall will be built again in the street or the plaza, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the princes shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and unto the end thereof shall be with the flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. And he, the Messiah who is cut off but not for himself, he who anoints the most holy with his own blood and thereby makes reconciliation for iniquity. And he, the Messiah, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1/7. Oh, I know. Hal Lindsey wrote a book in the 60s, and you've got your brain frozen on the Antichrist making a land deal with Israel. He made it up, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even in the context of the book of Daniel. Who is the he? The princes shall come is in a prepositional phrase, which is not in the direct line of the antecedent of the relative pronoun he. I'm sorry to do that so long after high school, but somebody had to tell you that. And he, the Messiah, who is cut off but not for himself, he who makes reconciliation for iniquity, it is he who confirms the covenant for 1/7. And ladies and gentlemen, until the ark of the covenant is revealed, that testimony which the Almighty put in the earth by revelation, he instructed Solomon to put a stone sarcophagus in Mount Moriah. Not under the Temple Mount, but under the place where Abraham built an altar for his son Isaac. And then Jeremiah, by revelation, read 2 Maccabees chapter 2, verses 2 and following, where Jeremiah, by revelation, hid the Ark of the Covenant in that stone sarcophagus. And then the chief rabbi of the land of Israel, the chief rabbi said, the ark was not lost. It was deliberately hidden in Mount Moriah. I've been in the chamber. I've seen the ark. That's what the chief rabbi of Israel, Shlomo Goren, said before his death. No reason to lie. It is that testimony in the earth. The Spirit, the water, and the blood, these three agree. And if we have received the testimony of men and believed, the testimony that God gave of His Son is greater. And this testimony in the earth is the testimony that God gave of His Son. Ladies and gentlemen, when the Ark of the Covenant is revealed, then the world will see, and it's not the world, it's Israel, whose eyes have been blinded partially, but there's coming a time when the blindness in part will be removed. The end of the time of the Gentiles, and He will open the eyes of His people. And when they see the Ark of the Covenant and the Messiah's blood on the right hand of the throne, they will understand the shadow picture that was put in the earth, the testimony that God gave of His Son, and they are going to weep and wail as one weeps and wails for their only son. They will look on Him of whom they have pierced, because the testimony is in the earth, and they will understand. We understand now, but ladies and gentlemen, that is what starts the last 7. What else do we know? We're going to have The signs in the heavens are there. What are we being told? A lot of conjecture. The question is, what have we been told? Number one, there will be no pre-tribulation rapture. So we need to get a grip on reality. We were born for this time. Now I've heard people say, well, you know, we're the bride of Messiah and he wouldn't put his bride through any... Wait, that's one figure of speech. We're warriors, we're boxers, we're fighters. You know, these are the other things that we are. We're ambassadors. You can't just pick one out because you like that and you can make up some story about how you're never going to go through anything bad. Oh, sorry, people. No, you're warriors. You're warriors. You were born for this. You are not going to back down. We stand on the shoulders of our forefathers who died to get a copy of this into the English language so that we could read it. We are not cowards. We are not going to hate and betray each other. Take a look at your neighbor. Say, I'm not going to betray you. I'm not going to hate you. I'll die for you. And kill anybody who tries to hurt you. All right. I'll strike that last one. I was just talking. Live now. What do these signs in the heavens tell us? Go for it now. You don't have next year. You don't have 2 years from now. Jim Brooks, he was the warrior. He was the one that was directing the Aviv Moon Intercessors Group. And for years is still with this ministry. Jim Brooks is with King David in the grave, waiting the return of the Messiah. Last Shabbat, he passed away. I would have loved to have Jim with us right to the end. His wife Brenda is going to keep on being strong. We have no idea how long we got, so you better live like you ain't got next year, because you may not have it. This whole thing could go up in a firestorm and you could be toast. So you better make this year count, because if you're rewarded for eternity for what you've already done, and that reality ought to scare all of us. It scares me. Chaim Goldman was there at the time in Jerusalem on the last great day of the Feast of Sukkot. Right after the World Trade Centers came down, I was in Israel, moved to Israel. Chaim and I built a sukkah. The last day, the last great day, was also a high Sabbath. I stayed up in my room and I received a revelation that I went downstairs, and to the men, the three men, Joshua Cohen, one guy is a lawyer. I still can't say his name because he's in hiding. He's covert in Israel. And Chaim Goldman. This guy's not covert anywhere. He's all over the television. Chaim, not a Dr. Goldman. They were there. I came down and I said, I'm going to do something. I'm going to read this to you. I want you to see if you see it. But I'm going to change the word woman to the word fire. And that's when the lawyer spoke up and said, you can't do that. What is it in Hebrew? I mean, he's got his Hebrew Bible right there. He could just read it. I said, no, I don't know what it is in Hebrew. Just listen to this. Ladies and gentlemen, just a few blocks from where these words are penned, Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1. Then I, Zechariah, turned and I lifted up my eyes and looked, and I beheld a flying Megillah, a scroll. And he, the angel, said, what do you see? And I said, I see a flying scroll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, the breadth thereof is 10 cubits, or the circumference of the thing is a line cast about, is 10 cubits. Then I said, and I figured it out. You know, that morning I worked it all out. A cubit, 20.62 inches. This is a flying scroll in the sky, 34.5 feet long. It is 6.5 feet in diameter. And he said, this is a curse that goes over the face of the earth. For everyone that steals should be cut off on this side, and everyone that swears, and later we find out swearing falsely in the name of the Lord, shall be cut off on that side. And I will bring it forth, saith Yehovah Tzevaot. And it shall enter the house of the thief, and enter into the house of him that swears falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the house, and it shall consume the house with the timber and the stones. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said, lift up your eyes and see what it is that goes forth, what it is that is flying in the sky. And I said, what is it? And he said, it's an ephah, which is a container. And how big is this container flying in the sky? It is 34.5 feet long, it's 6.5 feet in diameter, and what it does is it destroys entire buildings, including incinerating the wood and stone, and it remains, or it has a deadly residue that remains. And the angel says, okay, this is what they look like throughout all the earth. So whenever this thing comes about, this is what they look like all over the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and a woman that sits in the midst of the ephah. I said, and he said, this is wickedness, or it is evil. And he cast this evil woman in the midst of the container and put the lead lid on it. That's kind of what it says in English. But I worked this thing, and the translator, here it is, and I showed him. This is a flying container. It's 34.5 feet long, 6.5 feet in diameter, which is the dimensions of a modern-day Scud missile. It has an evil woman in it? No, it is an evil fire encased in lead that is sent to and will destroy all those who swear falsely in the name of the Lord and who steal my words one from another, as false prophets do, that is also spoken of in context here. Those who steal my words one from another, they are just blowing prophetic smoke up each other's skirts. They don't hear from me. They are not speaking my word. They are liars, and I'm going to send it forth, and I'm going to kill them. It's going to incinerate entire buildings, the wood and the stone. I said, it's an evil fire. And right then, everyone's mouth dropped open, and David said, okay, we all see it. What is the word? He opened up his Hebrew Bible. There it was. Asha. Asha is fire. Isha is woman. What's the difference? The difference wasn't in Zechariah's scroll because there are no vowel pointings. 800 years later, the Masoretes put the dot for the vowel pointing of Isha because perhaps the rabbi didn't get along with his wife. She's an evil woman. Put her in a basket, put a lead lid on it, and send her flying through the sky. Because an evil fire offering encased in lead in a flying container 34.5 feet long, 6.5 feet in diameter, that is set up in the land of Shinar doesn't make any sense. Except the modern day Shinar is Syria, Iran, and Iraq. And what did we just get through blowing up last August? The Israeli Air Force came in and whacked a number. I mean, we could feel the house shake when they hit those Scuds over in Syria. How long were those Scuds? 34.5 feet long, 6.5 feet in diameter. What is in these things? It's one bad woman. Ladies and gentlemen, that was revelation that came from heaven. And for the first time in the history of the transmission of the Holy Writ, since the 4th century, it was translated correctly. Why? Not because I'm brilliant. It's because the Almighty gave me the vision, and I saw it is a thermonuclear warhead, which is an evil fire offering encased in lead in these missiles that are set up in the land of Shinar. So the question is, ladies and gentlemen, that came on the last great day. You know what we were doing that night when the sun went down? Our first meeting of Last Great Day Productions. The next day, we headed out to Gomorrah and filmed Sodom and Gomorrah because we know what's coming down the pike. And did we back off? No, this thing's coming down. We moved to Israel right after 9/11. From the frying pan into the fire, ladies and gentlemen. Now, so I ask, when is this going to happen? Well, here it is. You just continue on. You continue on. It says, you know, the angel said, where are they taking the ephah? And he said, to build it a house in the land of Shinar. And it shall be established there and set upon her own base. I mean, you use King James, it says base. You know, here's a military base with Scud missiles. And we've got 60,000 of these things aimed at us. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, last year I was scheduled to fly back to America 2 days before Yom Teruah, the Day of Trumpets. And when everything started shaking down, I thought I could change my ticket. I've never seen a nuclear warhead go off. And if I get out of Israel now, I may never get to see one go off. And so I stayed. Because Syria had said if the U.S. attacks, they're going to launch these missiles against Israel. See, I don't want to be there to get nuked. I want to be there when the fulfillment of the prophecy in Joel takes place, when this army, invading army, which is like the Garden of Eden before them and behind them, it is a deserted wasteland, and where the stench of this army reaches heaven, when the Almighty fights for Israel, when Israel is brought to the brink of destruction and the Almighty fights for Israel and the Ark of the Covenant is revealed and the latter rain outpouring happens, which is in the same chapter of Joel, I want to be there. Now, if it happens this year when I'm over there, then you're not going to hear anything from me for a long time. You will not know if I'm alive or dead. I won't know if you're alive or dead. Okay? You know, when the Koreans, I mean, all they have to do is do this, you know, this nuclear blast over America, and all of our computers and all of our communication is down. We will be in the Stone Age, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we're looking at. We are looking at a time of tribulation such as not been from the beginning of time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days would be shortened, no flesh would be saved. Right now in the Ukraine, you saw it in the papers, Jews have to be registered. Right now, it's in your papers. They are registering Jews in the Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing is coming down. The signs in the heaven is telling us we don't have any time left. But the revelation has already come from heaven. There will be thermonuclear war. And when does it tell us about it? Zechariah 6:1. Remember, there are no chapters and verses in Zechariah. There's not a period. There's not a colon. There's nothing there. And I turned, lifted up my eyes, and looked, and behold, there came out 4 chariots, which are war vehicles. A chariot is not an implement of commerce. It's a war vehicle that Israel's told don't have chariots. It didn't say you can't have a donkey cart. It says don't have war chariots. There came out 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. Brass is a man-made alloy. These are not natural geographic formations. These are 2 man-made mountains. And what happened the week previous? 2 planes went into the 2 highest man-made mountains, and when they came out down, the war chariots were sent out. To where? To the land of Shinar. Now, for the first time, now that the U.S. has gotten involved, now on the Iraqi flag, for the first time in history, the Iraqi flag reads, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. The direct insult to the Almighty. See, that's the name of insult. Allahu Akbar. Yeah, Allah, the fictitious moon god, is greater than the God of Israel? Yeah, right. And then, what happened? What is our last word? What is the last word that I received from heaven? It was 2008, Yom Teruah. And I said, I am going to do Yom Teruah, which begins the night Ramadan ends, and I'm going to do it in the highest building in the one city with the highest Muslim population in America, Detroit, Michigan. I picked the highest building, Ramadan ends, Yom Teruah starts, and I pray. What am I to teach? And I hear a voice that says, Balaam. I have no question. I know I'm teaching Balaam. What am I going to teach about Balaam? I have no idea. So I open up the book of Numbers, chapter 22. I'll give you the short story because I just have a few minutes left. Balak, who is the king of Moab, assembles all the nations around him because they're deathly afraid because Israel's coming in to take the land. They're not going to take Moab, remember that? They're not allowed to take Moab. That's for lost children, the Ammonites and the Moabites, but they need to go through their land. Balak assembles all of the nations around him and sends for Balaam, a prophet, to come and curse these people. And then Balaam says, I can't go. I prayed, the Lord is not going to let me go. And then some more emissaries come and said, here is a blank check. You fill it out, you just come and curse these people. So he goes and prays again, in case the Almighty's changed his mind, because it's a blank check. I mean, it's like 4 million, 10, whatever you want. And so he gets a word. If they come and call you, you can go with them. Balaam gets up early, saddles his ass before anyone gets up, and is outside the window. Hello? Anybody in there? In other words, he is going because he's going for the bucks. On his way, on the way there, he's riding his faithful ass, which he's had all these years, and his ass then goes off the road, and he's just furious. And he gets out, and he's got his staff, and he beats his ass with his staff. And finally, he gets back on his ass and goes down a little bit more. And then he goes to this narrow place, and his ass then crushes his foot against the rocks. His foot is bleeding. He's yelling and screaming, you stupid ass! And takes his rod and starts beating his ass with this again. Then he goes on down further. I'm just talking King James for all of you. I think all of our children should learn King James English. And so he goes on further, and this time his ass goes off the road, and then he gets like a 2x4 out and is beating his ass. And then the ass turns around and says, wait, in all the years that I've been your ass, have I ever done anything like this? And he said, no, but you've never talked to me like this either. And then his eyes are open, he sees an angel, and this angel has got a sword in his hand. He's like 13 feet tall, and he sees what the ass saw because an angel was sent to kill him. That's why the ass went off his way. And so he repents and said, okay, I won't go. And the angel says, no, you go, but you do exactly as you're told. He goes to Balak. Balak assembles all of the nations around him on a mountain peak. And he says, Balaam, look out over this people and curse them. Balaam says, build me 7 altars. And on these 7 altars, sacrifice 7 bulls and 7 rams. And so he does. Remember, on the peak of a mountain, it is a United Nations summit, literally. Curse these people so they don't take the land that I promised to Abraham by a covenant forever. And so Balaam, 7 altars, 7 bulls, 7 rams, sacrifices them, and then he blesses Israel. And then Balak is furious. He takes them to another mountaintop, another United Nations summit. And what does Balaam do by revelation? 7 altars, 7 bulls, 7 rams. He blesses Israel again. They get moral. And then Balak is furious again. He takes them up to his third United Nations summit. 7 altars, 7, and this time Balaam prophesies the shout of a king is among them. We know who that king is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what it speaks of. Balaam took up this parable because it's a parallel. A parable is something in the physical universe that is a relationship to something in the spiritual world, because without this parallel on the physical, we wouldn't understand the spiritual. Balaam gave this parable because here is reality now. You are not going to keep these people from taking the land. There is no curse that can come upon these people. But what do we have? 1993, Oslo, a 7-year plan by the United Nations, signed on the White House lawn with the United States acting as guarantor for the United Nations, in which at the end of 7 years, Jerusalem would be divided, Israel would be divided, the Pope would get a piece of the action for the promise of peace. What happened 7 years later? 6 months before, I said violence will erupt in Jerusalem before sundown, September 28th, annulling the covenant with death, the agreement with hell prophesied by Isaiah. What happened? It was done on the day. Ladies and gentlemen, you better listen to what I'm saying, because that revelation came from heaven, not from me. I'm not smart. Ask my mother. I could give you examples. I'm not going to. Now, 7 times, and this is the message I'm going to Yom Teruah with. I get to Detroit, the Detroit Free Press, the papers all over America. As soon as I get there, I check into the hotel, the paper comes in bold headlines that big. Stock market drops 777 points. 777. 3 times 7. 3 times the angel stopped Balaam. 3 times United Nations summits. 3 times 7 altars, 7 bulls, 7 rams. Oslo. 7 years later, Camp David. Another 7-year plan to divide Israel. What happened in 2007, 7 years later? Annapolis Peace Accord. 3 United Nations summits, 7 years apart. And what was the warning? The stock market, 777 points. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been told from heaven what is about to take place. And this is exactly why I spent 35 hours, 35 weeks teaching the book of Revelation. And every teaching I'm doing it like, okay, this is the last one. What's next on the agenda? It's my last teaching I will ever get out to the world. And that's why we're in Judges right now, because the king is coming. Everyone's doing what is right in their own eyes because there's no king in the land, but yet in the book of Judges, the king was in heaven. He was the king of Israel, but because he was not personally present, people did whatever they wanted. That's why there will be no unity in the Christian or the Messianic world. Why? Because the king is not here. People will do whatever they want, but are you going to obey the king? Moses told us there is a prophet coming in the future, a prophet who hears directly from heaven. He will not speak the words of his own choosing. He will speak the words that he hears from heaven. And we must shema. We must hear and obey that prophet. And those who don't will be judged according to their non-compliance with the words of that prophet. That's why the chronological Gospels read Yeshua's words in context. You better understand what the gospel of the kingdom is about, because you've never been taught it in church. Never. I don't care if you've been to theological seminary for 20 years. You don't have an idea. You've been given little doctor-numbered sound bites, completely stripped out of the context of time. Because time is the ultimate context. And if you do not have Yeshua's words in context, then all you have are little numbered sound bites that are taken out for someone's convenience so they can give you a little fluffy, Jesus loves you, and go out and have a pork sandwich after church. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the revelation. What is heaven is showing us now, the revelation has already been given to us. I've been putting it out there for years. I need you to stand with me and help get this message out. You need to make sure that you've got these materials. The beating of Balaam's ass, prophetically speaking. Why does the United Nations keep on beating Balaam's ass? Good question. Zechariah's thermonuclear war, it's in the mystery of iniquity. And then, when the brimstone hits the fan, a few last-minute instructions. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an exciting time. I'm glad you're here for this very event because the brimstone is about to hit the fan, and we get to be here for all the excitement. Wouldn't want to miss it. Amen? Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, it takes an extreme amount of energy, time, and money to make these broadcasts available, these teachings available to you and to those around the world. And we really need you to seriously stand with us on this very project that Yeshua put us on, to take the gospel of the kingdom that he taught to the entire world in the last days. The opportunity is there. With more than 30 people on staff just here in the United States to make these things available, it takes a lot of money. And if you appreciate the work that we're doing and reaching out to you around the world, please stand with us and stand with us today.